Perfect. Thanks so much. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Careers Insight panel for Study Abroad and Languages. So during this panel, you will hear our University of Exeter alumni guests discuss their degree experiences and career journeys as I ask them some initial questions. There'll also be a brief presentation partway through in which we take a look at the many pathways that these degree subjects can lead to. You'll have the opportunity to gain tips and advice from our speakers, as well as to ask them some questions yourselves. So please do post your questions in the chat and we'll do our very best to answer as many of them as we can. If you would prefer to ask your question anonymously, please do send me a direct message in the chat. So I'm now going to introduce our brilliant panelists who have joined us today. So panelists, when I call on you, can you please tell us what you studied at university, what your current role is, and also if you would like to add in a fun fact about yourself, that would be fantastic too. So let's start with Lucy.
Hi everyone, I'm Lucy and I studied French and German with TESOL, Teaching English to Speakers of Other Languages at Exeter. And I'm currently teaching English as a British assistant in France, in southwest France. An interesting fact is I'm Welsh, so I speak kind of not so much fluent anymore, but I can speak Welsh because I've grown up speaking Welsh. So that's my interesting fact.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lucy. And Connor?
Hi everyone, my name is Connor Archer. I studied BA Modern Languages, French and German. I am a product specialist for a company called Alumni. That's commonly referred to as an account executive in most other companies. And I guess fun fact is I live in Copenhagen, so I'm based in Copenhagen, Denmark.
Wonderful. And Yajo?
Hello everyone, hope you're all well. Thanks for tuning in on this Wednesday evening. So yes, I'm Yadra Kapoor. I studied law with European Study at Exeter between 2014 and 2018. I did a year abroad in the Netherlands studying at Maastricht University. I currently work as a commercial lawyer for an international law firm. And fun fact, I don't quite have the the international experience that the rest of the panelists do. But my fun fact is that I once almost accidentally headbutted the Queen when I was invited to present flowers to her for her birthday because I tripped over my shoelaces, and it so happened that this was being broadcast on BBC News at the time. So it's quite a mortifying experience for me. But yes, that's my fun fact.
You know, I've been on a couple of panels this week and that's the best fun fact I've heard.
I'm glad.
And let's finish off with Emily.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Haddy. I studied conservation biology and ecology at the Cornwall campus of the University of Exeter. I did a year's study abroad at Montana State University. I'm now just about to finish my PhD, which is in working in good welfare. And my fun fact does definitely not compete with the previous one, but I rehabilitate injured bats in my spare time.
Fantastic. Thank you, everyone. And thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. So just as a reminder to our panel, when I ask a question, if you could please use the raise hand function on Zoom or just raise your physical hand, that works just as well. And then I will come to you to answer the question. So my first question for you all is a two-parter. So firstly, what inspired you to get into the subject or subjects that you ended up studying at university? And were you torn between more than one subject or when you were deciding what you wanted to study, or were you kind of sure of what you wanted to do? So I'll give you a minute or so, and then if you pop up your hand when you want to answer. Okay, Lucy.
So I actually studied French, German, biology and chemistry at A-level. So I was quite torn between which kind of path I wanted to take. I really enjoyed the sciences, but I really loved the opportunity that languages could bring. So I intended on actually studying a combined honours degree in French and biosciences in the hope of translating scientific papers and merging the two. But I found when I was about 18, towards the end of my A-levels, that I loved languages much more. They gave the opportunity to travel, to understand people, to understand the world. And I wanted to dedicate my time to just those passions. So I was torn, but when I came to Exeter and I started my degree, it was very clear to me that languages was the right choice and the right path for me. And I've never really looked back at that decision. So that was my kind of umming and ahhing at 17, 18, but I really love languages and everything that they've provided me so far.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, Lucy. Yaja?
Yeah, so I was quite torn between studying law and PP, philosophy, politics, economics. I did quite a diverse sort of range of A-levels. So I did maths, history, economics, and physics. So a bit of a blend of subjects. And I think that kind of alluded to the fact that I wasn't really sure of what I wanted to do at university. And then I think in the end, the reason why I decided to go into law, it was kind of like, you know, a heads or tails moment for me between both PP and law. But I think the reason why I went with law was because of the fact that it does teach you so many, you know, reasoning skills, the ability to kind of argue persuasively, think laterally, to write concisely. And yes, you could do that in a, you know, PP degree as well. And I think it's another fantastic degree to do. But for me, it was also, I wasn't really sure whether I wanted to even become a lawyer. You know, I'm the first lawyer in my family as well. So studying law kind of gave me an opportunity to be like, okay, I'll be able to derive these skills from it. And if I then decide to go and actually become a lawyer, which is what I eventually did, I could do that. But a law degree is something that does allow you the opportunity to do, you know, so many different jobs that aren't actually related to law at all. So that kind of prompted my thinking as well.
That's fantastic to hear. And it reminds me, I was speaking to one of the law academics on campus the other day, and she was saying, I've taught people who've gone on to run restaurants and do such diverse, different things with a law degree. So that's fantastic to hear. Do any of our other panelists want to come in on that question? Emily?
I guess I always knew that I wanted to do something with animals, but I was kind of torn between doing veterinary and then looking at kind of conservation biology. And then even kind of when I'd made the decision that I wanted to pursue a more conservation route, I was still a little bit torn, is zoology or conservation biology better? But I think speaking with academics and people at the university about the courses themselves helped make that decision, and there was actually a lot of overlap anyway between the two. And I think also the ability to study in Cornwall, where quite a lot of the inspiration for that career choice and my passion for being outside and in nature had kind of come from, was something that was a big bonus. So that helped.
Thank you so much for that. Connor, you've unmuted. Are you? Oh.
Yeah, I could. Yeah.
Don't worry. If you don't.
No, I actually applied for a different, well, very slightly different degree to what I ended up doing at Exeter. I actually applied to do French and German with beginners Spanish and got the grades to enter into that, but realized upon getting the offer that I didn't actually want to do a beginner's language from scratch. I wanted to just continue doing the two that I'd already done at A-level. So I actually switched courses after having got my place. And I was also umming and ahhing about doing languages with economics to sort of tie in another kind of business role within that. But the flexibility at Exeter enabled me to actually do some international relations modules along the side of my language degree, where I had more of an interest. So although my degree title was just BA Modern Languages, I did actually do 3 modules during my time there in international relations to sort of broaden my skill set, I suppose.
And what made you all choose the University of Exeter for your studies?
Sorry, I didn't catch the end of what you said there, Rachel.
Sorry, I was just saying, what made you choose the University of Exeter for your studies?
I guess maybe because I'm unmuted, I can just start. I'm from Essex originally, so from the other side of the country to Exeter, and I wanted to get quite far away from home, not because I have horrible parents, but I just wanted to have that proper university experience. Like Emily said as well, I'm quite a big fan of nature, and I really liked the campus vibe at Exeter, plus they offered a very, very good program for what I wanted to do. So that was the main reasoning for my thinking.
Yaja?
Yeah, I mean, other than Exeter being, the absolute best university in the country, I think my reasoning was quite similar to Connor. So I'm from Hertfordshire, quite close to London. So I actually actively did decide to go for universities that were, further away from London, just because I thought it'd be a good opportunity to actually learn a lot of skills that you perhaps wouldn't get from, going to university and commuting from home. But also, for similar reasons, I think it's a beautiful campus, and two, the program, the law program, so great, and quite well renowned. So it was quite an easy decision for me in the end.
Fantastic. So moving on, what did you all kind of enjoy most about your degree subjects? Emily, your hand is blurred, but I can see it's up. Something about Zoom background. I'm going to lose some fingers in the background.
For me, it was the study abroad element that was my absolute favourite part of my whole degree, and to a certain extent the other fieldwork elements that we did in other years. But yeah, for me, the study abroad year was also a big attraction for why I particularly wanted that course, and I knew kind of where I wanted to go from the very beginning, and for me that didn't disappoint. So yeah, I would say definitely the study abroad element for me.
And just, can you tell us a little bit more about that study abroad experience that obviously kind of sold it for you, that was what you wanted to study? What did you want to get out of that study abroad experience, and do you feel like it met your expectations?
Oh, so loads of things. And I think I wanted personally to get kind of more experience of going somewhere that I'd never been before, very far away from home, because I stayed quite close to home. I was from Cornwall. I stayed in Cornwall for the rest of my degree. So for that was my part of, getting very far away and kind of broadening, like growing a bit as a person, I guess, at that age. But also I'd mentioned that I really love nature, and I went to Montana State University, which is right next to Yellowstone. So all of my free time, I was just out exploring and doing nature-related things. So I absolutely loved the course out there. They had some modules kind of specific to the wildlife and things they get there. And I also just happened to meet a really great group of people while I was there. Very adventurous and up for doing the same things that I wanted to do. So I think all of the elements just kind of came together for me. I was very lucky.
Fantastic, thank you for that. So just going back to my original question for the rest of the panel, what did you enjoy most about studying your degree subject? Lucy.
So I really loved my degree with the opportunities that it gave for year abroad as well. So I studied at the University of Vienna in Austria for 7 months as an Erasmus student. I unfortunately was part of the pandemic year abroad group, so I didn't get to teach in Paris as planned, hence why I'm here as a graduate to make up for lost time. But I really loved the opportunities and the preparation that the degree gave you for your year abroad. You really felt confident and ready and excited to go in. You felt really encouraged by your lecturers and by your course mates. Everyone on my degree subject had the kind of same mentality of the opportunity that languages can give you, and how important it is to really go for it and go out there and put yourself out there in opportunities. That was really taught to us, and we were lucky enough to have lecturers that were really inspiring for things like that. So I really love that about my degree subject, as well as the opportunity to do a range of modules from linguistics to history, theatre, culture. So I studied a theatre module in my second year, which then inspired me to do my dissertation on French theatre. And an extracurricular idea that one of my lecturers had was to perform an online French play. So during the pandemic, we partnered with some students in California and some students in Paris, and we performed Molière, the French Shakespeare, online. So everyone's very passionate and everyone wants to share that passion. So I think it was very easy to enjoy that together with other people on the course.
That sounds fantastic. And what a way to kind of make the most of the virtual environment as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. So do we have any other kind of ideas? Oh, yeah, Yaja?
Yeah, so I think your question was what did you, sorry, do you mind repeating the question?
Yeah, no worries at all. So what did you enjoy most about studying your degree subject?
Yeah, so for me, I think so first of all, when you're studying law, it's very different doing it academically versus in practice. I can see that difference now, having been in this, having actually practiced for, a couple of years now. I really found the academic study of law quite stimulating. I know it's not the most interesting subject to, by the sounds of it, but it is actually quite intriguing in, the depth that you go into at university. There are so many different types of law that you can study. It does, I'm practicing commercial law right now, but at university I've got a chance to do things like immigration law, family law, and that's something that I really enjoyed. And as far as studying abroad, tying that element into it as well, I initially only did the standard 3-year law course, and I only found out about the opportunity to study abroad towards the end of my first year. So that again, I talked about the fact that for me it was quite nice to move away from home and get that independence and that student experience. I think the opportunity to study abroad, I thought, would be an extension of that. So I ended up applying towards the beginning of my second year to study abroad. And unfortunately, I don't have the language skills that Lucy O'Connor possess. So I opted to study in the Netherlands, in the University of Maastricht, where everything was taught in English. So yeah, I mean, if you're someone who perhaps doesn't quite have the modern languages at your grasp, it's quite a good opportunity. Exeter does have many many exchange universities you can go to that are English speaking as well. So yeah, for me that element was quite nice. It also provided a bit of a nice break away from Exeter, because I could then have that experience abroad and then come back for my final year. And the skills that I developed from my year abroad, because the way it worked in the Maastricht as far as studying goes was very different to how we're taught in Exeter. So I was able to, bring the skills that I developed abroad back for my final year at university. And I think that definitely made a difference as far as how I achieve academically as well. So yeah, that was kind of my experience and what I enjoyed most about the course.
Great, thank you so much. And also it would be great to hear a little bit from each of you about your careers since graduating, and also if you can remind everyone, because we've had a few people coming in a bit later, what your current role is, that would be fantastic. Hi, Connor.
I can start. I'm pretty up to date on. There's one topic where I know what I'm doing is my own life, barely, but seem to be getting by. So I graduated in 2017 from Exeter, and rightly or wrongly, I had this vision that I wanted to have a corporate sort of professional job in or around the London area after I graduated. So I applied to a lot of grad schemes, to all of the big companies, which also was kind of a point proving exercise for me, that just because you study languages doesn't mean you have to become a teacher, which is what a lot of my friends seem to put me in, like that box of, okay, you're going to become a teacher. I couldn't be more further removed from being a teacher. So I ended up working for Bloomberg, which is Mike Bloomberg's company, the kind of finance corporation. and realized that I hated that. So it's completely okay to, you know, have expectations of something and then change that. And as I said at the beginning, I'm from a small town in Essex, and I was commuting every day back and forth on the same train. It was the 646 Greater Anglia from Billericay to London Liverpool Street. I remember it as if it were yesterday. And I just had this epiphany where I thought, I can't do this for the rest of my 20s. Like, I have the whole of my life left and I don't want to do this. I could see the same miserable faces on the same trains every day. So I just applied to a bunch of different jobs in countries in Europe before Brexit. That was also another kind of thing that was giving me a bit of island anxiety with the UK. So I just wanted to get out. Sweden was actually the first country to offer me a job. So I moved to Sweden. That didn't quite work out, and I ended up in Copenhagen, where I now work as an account executive for a software company. And my job is 100% German speaking. So my languages weirdly brought me to a country where they don't actually speak the language that I learned. So I guess that's quite random.
That's amazing. Amazing to hear.
Sorry, I couldn't hear again, Rachel. I don't know if it...
Sorry, can other people hear me? Is my mic dropping? All right.
No, I can hear you now.
Okay, great. No, I was just saying that's really fantastic to hear. So if anyone else would like to tell us about your kind of career since graduating and remind us of your current role, that would be fantastic. Yeah, Lucy.
So I actually joined Exeter when Connor graduated. So I joined in 2017 and I graduated only last summer. So I'm very new into my career, and working life is fun. I think, so I'm here in France. I'm teaching as an English language assistant with the British Council in France. And I mainly decided to do this because I didn't get the opportunity to live abroad in France, and that's something I really wanted to do before leaving Exeter. So I'm here now as a graduate, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm enjoying the teaching side, I'm enjoying the pastoral side, seeing how students kind of progress. And I think it's quite interesting when people do say, you know, when you study languages, you'll become a teacher. And I've always tried to kind of repel that stigma of, you know, that's all you can be. But I think when I took up teaching English in my second year, I just knew that I really wanted to be a teacher. I just absolutely love it. It's something that brings me a lot of joy. And I think when you know, and there's no point, you know, forcing yourself into a career that doesn't fit you. So I think being here in France has kind of confirmed how much I love to kind of see people progress in English as a foreign language, or in French and German. So I'm actually going to do a PGCE at Oxford in September in French and German. So my path's kind of headed towards education, and currently now it's going quite well. So that's where I'm at.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. Okay, Emily, your hand's up.
Hi. Yeah, I graduated a while back and did a few different things. I didn't initially want to go on to do further studies. At the moment, I was just about to finish my PhD. So I did eventually go on to do further study, but that wasn't my plan when I graduated. But having had a couple of like more subject related like temporary jobs, I then thought, oh well, maybe actually having done someone else's research, I could do my own research, and applied to do a PhD, which was accepted luckily by a funding council, by the ESRC. So they put me through doing my master's at the University of Southampton, and now I've spent nearly 4 years at the University of Portsmouth, and I've been really lucky to have done a project that I'm really invested in and really love. So I've enjoyed the past 4 years and been able to travel a little bit more with my study as well. So yeah, that's where I'm at the moment.
And in my case, I graduated in 2018, and with legal practice, you kind of have a route in a way as far as the post-university period goes, because you can either, well, if you decide you want to, pursue law as a profession, in the UK, you can either go down the route as a barrister, which is where you're representing people in courts, or you can go down the solicitor route, which is where you're working at big international law firm, or law firms in general. So I decided to go for the latter route, which was the solicitor route. So I actually, before I left in 2017, at the end of my third year, I did an internship at my current law firm and was offered a job which is called a training contract, which would begin in 2020. So I graduated in 2018. And then straight after that, you have what is called a one-year course called the legal practice course, which you have to do. It's something that you have to do to become on the route to become a solicitor. And actually, the good thing with a legal career is you don't actually have to study a law degree in order to become a lawyer. I'd say half the people have actually done non-law degrees, and then they can do, well, at least until September 2021, they could do something called the graduate diploma in law, which allowed you to convert your non-law degree to a law degree, which used to annoy a few of us law graduates, because effectively our 3 years or 4 years in my case of studying law was equivalent to the 1 year conversion that someone else did, but came to terms with it eventually. So yes, that now I think has been replaced with like this huge exam called the solicitors qualifying examination, where you can actually do both the graduate diploma in law and the LPC together. So if you are, someone who wants to study a non-law degree but wants to then go and actually become a lawyer, that's a route you can take. But yeah, going back to me, I did this LPC and the legal practice course for a year. And then I started my training contract, which is a two-year training period effectively, at my current law firm. And I finished that in February of this year, and since then I'm now a qualified lawyer. So yes, that's my route as well. Sorry for the long kind of.
No, that's great to hear. It's really
you joined the panel.
Great. Thanks so much, Catherine, for that. Yes, welcome to our final panelist. If you're happy to introduce yourself and just let us know what you studied at university, what your current role is, and talk a little bit about your career path so far, it'd be great to hear. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Sorry about coming in late. My name is Fumio Shibona. I am an associate field officer at the UN Refugee Agency, and I studied international relations in Arabic at Exeter back in 2009 to 2013, so a while ago. I initially had a combined honours degree, so that gave me some flexibility. So I started off doing politics and Arabic, and then had a study year abroad in my second year, and then changed to international relations and Arabic. So now once I graduated, I did an internship with the UN in London. And that internship led to a position in Lebanon with the UN. And then from then on, I kind of continued to climb up the ranks and working several other locations. And so currently I'm working in Uganda, in a refugee settlement that hosts Burundian, Somali, and Congolese refugees. So that's a very, very, very brief overview of what I've done since leaving university, but the majority of the time I spent working with refugees. But it was definitely triggered by studying Arabic at Exeter and having my year abroad in Syria, the year before the war broke out.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us. I've got one last question for our fantastic panel before we take a short break. So just a reminder to the panel, if you want to pop your hand up when you're ready to answer a question, then I'll kind of work through people that way. So how did your degree prepare you for your career path, and what kind of skills and attributes did you develop throughout your degree? Okay, Lucy.
Yes, just trying to gather my thoughts, because I think the degree over 3 or 4 years, you learn so much every year, and you change every year as a person. You continue to grow and learn lots of things. I remember reading my essays in first year when I was a finalist, thinking this is awful. So you really do develop kind of your own voice as a learner, as a student. You develop your own passion. So I think my degree really helped me discover what I loved, and the flexibility of the modules and the differences in how lecturers delivered their modules really meant that I found my passion, and it was easy to kind of take off from there. So I gained a lot of skills in confidence as speaking languages. I felt very prepared for my year abroad, living in another country and kind of adapting to those new situations and those new environments, and being quite resourceful, not just in general, but using your languages that you learnt. I think also you learn to obviously organize your time, manage your time. You want to balance things that your priorities, your studies, and you also want to enjoy yourself and take up some societies, meet new people, take up new activities. So it's about balance. I think you learn to find your priorities, and I really gained a lot of skills in managing things that are important to me, and managing my time well with studying and making that balance as well. So those are what stand out to me, just thinking about them. And of course, the dissertation itself is a big kind of organizational task that you really lead up to over the few years that you do your studying. So I really gained a lot of skills doing that as well.
Yeah, so many transferable skills from lots of different degrees. And I agree, the time management is so important in any kind of job you go into. So do we have anyone else who wants to come in on that question? So it's just about how your degree prepared you for your career path, and what kind of skills and attributes you feel you developed throughout your time at university. Connor?
I think piggybacking on what the others said with their years abroad, when you do immerse yourself in a new culture, throw yourself into a new country where you don't know anyone, you really just have to prepare yourself for the real world, and you just have to learn to take on new challenges. Weirdly enough, I've made like really, really close friends from being served in a H&M. You just go out there and you're like, hey, how do you make friends in Germany? How do you make friends in Sweden? I don't know anyone here. And pretty much every single time I've done it, it's worked out well, and I'm still in touch with these people. I go and visit them, or because they served me a mug from H&M. So I think it's taught me to basically just be open, to have the confidence to trust people and their behavior with you, and to just grab life by the horns, so to speak, and just go with it. Because the worst thing that's going to happen is someone says, no, I don't want to be your friend, or no, sorry, I'm not interested. And then you know what? You just move on and you carry on, do it to the next person. And eventually you will find people in these spaces. I've made the most amazing friends, both in my time in my year abroad in Germany and since moving to Scandinavia, just by being out there and open and just really throwing yourself into it. So don't hold back. And I think that's what I learned the most at university. Also at Exeter, meeting people from all different walks of life from the UK that I otherwise would never have met. So take whatever opportunity comes your way. The worst thing that can happen is it doesn't work out, and home isn't going anywhere. So yeah, that's what I would say.
That's such good advice. Thank you for that, Connor. For me?
Yeah, I don't want to sound repetitive, but definitely my year abroad was probably the most instrumental part of preparing me for work, or at least work in this field. I think what might be unique with Arabic compared to other languages is that the language that you learn in university, or at least in my first 2 years, is different from the dialect that's spoken. And so studying a dialect my year abroad really allowed me to gain the language skills that I was going to need to work with refugees from the Middle East. And so if I hadn't done my year abroad, and if I hadn't studied in an Arabic speaking country and learnt the dialect on the street and how people actually spoke with each other, then I definitely wouldn't have been prepared. And at least in my field, you need a second language to progress and throughout the different career steps. So if I hadn't learnt a second language, and if I hadn't learnt a dialect, then I think I would have really struggled. So it was definitely one of the things that helped prepare me. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. So unless anyone else has anything they'd like to add, what we'll do at this point is take a 5-minute break. So panelists, feel free to turn off your cameras and go and grab a cup of tea as well. After that 5 minutes, we'll come back at about, let's say, 6:45. We'll come back here and we'll have a quick presentation about transferable skills you can gain from the degrees that we've been talking about. And then it's time for questions from the audience. So please do take this time to think of some questions. Do make the most of our fantastic panelists being here. Feel free to post them in the chat and we will come to them shortly. So enjoy your break, everyone, and I'll see you in about 5 minutes. As you can see from our first slide, our panelists come from a really wide range of professions, but there are so many more destinations where degrees which have a study abroad element or language degrees can lead you. Our panelists are showcasing kind of a snapshot of some of the destinations that our many alumni have gone on to. There are lots of transferable skills from these degrees, which employers really appreciate, as well as subject-specific skills. So this list is not exhaustive by any means, but if you are interested in taking a degree with a study abroad element, or in fact a language degree, you'd be looking to develop skills like the ability to research, source and examine information, written verbal skills, intellectual independence and autonomy, which I think is really important, a flexible and open-minded approach to work, which again is very, very important as you move forward with your career, critical reasoning and analytical skills, creative thinking and problem-solving skills, and the ability to manage your time, organize your work and meet deadlines. So here we can see some of the many pathways that our alumni have taken. There are lots of options and gateways open to you with these degrees. But I definitely say do what you love, what you're interested in, and spend time working on building those skills for the workplace throughout your degree. So people who have studied study abroad courses and languages courses at the University of Exeter have gone on to be production assistants, French language teachers, media analysts, writers. Someone went on to be a Royal Marine officer, TV researcher, officer cadet, lots of different paths that people have taken. And let's also have a look at some of the employers that have taken on students who have done study abroad courses at Exeter or language courses. So we've got the Royal United Services Institute, Deloitte, BBC, Amazon, Lego, Microsoft, National Trust. We've got some really kind of well-known organisations here, just to give you a bit of an insight into where our fantastic graduates have gone on to. So this is the point where it would be great to have some questions from our audience. So if you do have any questions that you would like to ask our panel, please do post them in the chat. If you'd like to ask them anonymously, then feel free to send them my way as well. That would be great. But whilst you're thinking of those questions, let's kind of have a bit of a chat about what has been the biggest highlight of your careers so far. So if you want to answer that question, feel free to pop up a hand and we'll come to you. So biggest highlight of your career. It's a tricky question. Connor.
So I think for me, a fun highlight, by the way, as a side note, I couldn't really care less about football, but our office is located in the National Stadium of Denmark, and FC Copenhagen's home stadium. And as an account executive, I sell basically, it's a sales role. And we have to sometimes create presentations for RFPs and sell the product to the client. And I was working with a football organization and I actually got the chance to film on the pitch. So we got a pass to go onto the pitch and basically just film me talking about our company on a football pitch when there was no one in there, which was really fun. So I enjoyed that.
That sounds really, really fantastic. Good highlight, very good highlight. Does anyone else fancy venturing an answer? I understand it's a big question. Emily.
I think my career highlights have been more kind of personal highlights in terms of being able to travel and live in other places whilst I've been collecting my data. So some of the most enjoyable times that I've had have been with people from these locations where I've been collecting data and just being able to experience their culture with them, and they'll take you along to events, like super friendly, and being able to see slices of life that I never would have been able to see if I hadn't been to those locations. So I think for me, that's my personal highlight of what I've been able to do so far.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, Emily. We are getting some questions in the chat, which is great to see, some kind of coming directly, which is fantastic. So we have a question from Roxana. She's asking, how did your university help you be secure in your year abroad? So I guess in terms of support that you received from your university, how did that kind of help you feel secure during your year away? Lucy?
So I did my year abroad in 2019 to 2020, so quite recently, and we had really good lectures. Essentially, they were year abroad lectures and year abroad seminars, and that's when we were kind of given the opportunity to perhaps express any concerns or worries we might have, any concerns about our confidence. And the lecturers, the professors would kind of tailor these sessions to set you up for year abroad by creating kind of scenarios. So you'd use your language, for example, practice in French, German, or any other language in how to rent a flat or how to open a bank account in that language. So things that, you know, really practical skills. So they set you up for the practical things with these seminars. They gave a lot of reading, they gave a lot of kind of testimonials, if you like, from other students who've been on their year abroad with good advice as well, so that you had access to this kind of reading. And as well, they prepared you a lot for I'd say the kind of mental health side of it, because you are moving away, you're moving away from home when you first go to university, but moving to another country is a whole new kind of ball game. So they really kind of gave that support to you before, during, and after your year abroad. They would be very quick on responses with emails, for example, and they'd always provide you with a lot of material for mental health, helping you if you're ever lonely or need more support. So the support network was very, very good. And of course, you have your course mates as well to support you while you're out there. You're all in the same situation. So I felt very well prepared, and even afterwards, reflecting on the year abroad was something that was very important as well. So we had the opportunity to do that. Yeah.
It's really good to hear that that support's in place. And Fumi, is your hand up?
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
It wasn't actually my year abroad, but after my year abroad, there's a very specific grant or some kind of bursary or scholarship that is given by the Arabic Institute from, I can't remember the specific name, but it's very easy to apply to. And I believe it's still in place till today. And it was a grant of about £1,500. So it was financial support that you could apply for, but was readily given to most students that were on my course. And you could either use that money to support an internship in the summer holidays after your study year abroad, or you could use it to continue studying in a Arabic-speaking country for the summer holidays. And that was really useful. So for me, I had the usual support that you get on the study year abroad, but knowing that Arabic is quite a hard language to learn, there was also additional support after my study year abroad for the subsequent summer holidays. And that was financial support that was really, really useful. So I had some financial support as well from the university.
And Yama has asked, how did expanding your network during your internship or your study abroad year help with your career? Yaja.
So I think for me, it was actually a precursor in a way to working at the kind of international law firm that I work at right now, because on my year abroad in Maastricht, I actually came across people from all over the world as far as the exchange went. And in a way, it was really nice to have that exposure. As someone who has grown up in quite a few different countries, it was an extension of being able to have that kind of cosmopolitan approach that doing a year abroad allows you to have. And that has carried on as I've gone into the current law firm that I work at, which is an international law firm. You look around the office and there are people from different backgrounds. Our clients are from all over the world. We're representing both sovereigns and people from the other side of the world, but we're able to do that. I think that year abroad was in a way an opportunity to develop those skills to be able to do the kind of job that I'm doing right now. And actually, at my current law firm, the fact that I have this international background, I think it definitely made a difference in actually being able to get my foot into the door in the first place, because it's a very competitive process to get into a law firm like this. And also it's something that's encouraged. For instance, I've just come back from 6 months in Geneva, where I was I spent 6 months in an office over there. Got a chance to learn a bit of French. I'm not claiming that my French is fantastic by any stretch, but it was again an opportunity to develop on the international skills, or the ability to kind of interact with people from all walks of life that the year abroad provided.
That's amazing, and I love Geneva. Such a fantastic place. So Remy's asked a few questions that touch a bit on what we've talked about so far, but they've also asked how competitive are placements? So I suppose when you're at university and you're applying to go to on your study abroad year, how did you find that experience? Was it competitive to kind of go where you wanted to? Lucy.
So I would say that for the year abroad in languages, you have to have a 2-1 average to go on your year abroad. You have to have 60% or above. And I think that's the same for all year abroad courses, I believe. But for languages, it is 60%. If you want to study in large capital cities, for example, Berlin, you have to have a much higher grade, I think, because they require I'm not quite sure why. Maybe it's like a more renowned university. If you want to study in Berlin, for example, you might need a first, for example. But apart from that, I didn't really find it massively competitive. I think because in my course, everyone chooses different paths. You know, you can work, you can study, and you can be a British language assistant if you're doing a language degree. So there are lots of opportunities to go in different directions. So in terms of competitiveness on the language course, I'd say most people got where they wanted to go and studied where they wanted to be. And if you choose to be a language assistant, there's some element of competitiveness in that you choose one region and they send you anywhere in that region. So sometimes people might not get their first choice of Paris or first choice of like Outre-mer, you know, kind of Guadeloupe, La Réunion as well. It's like a nice sunny year abroad. Some people don't get to go there, but overall, I think the process isn't too competitive, and everyone has kind of equal opportunities in that sense as well.
And would you say, again, a question for everyone, that the pandemic has changed anything in terms of attitudes towards working abroad? Emily?
I don't know so much in relation to study abroad, but certainly in the fieldwork that I've been doing more recently, throughout kind of parts of the pandemic and just after, the paperwork side of things has been a lot more difficult, and just to get insurance, I think, through university has been a challenge. But as those restrictions are kind of lifting now, I'm hoping that that should make it easier again. So fingers crossed going forward, it'll be less of an issue.
So has anyone else encountered any challenges in terms of working abroad since the pandemic, or has it been smooth sailing? Lucy?
I would say that in the field that I'm in, you know, teaching, we've had quick chops and changes with the pandemic because people have got COVID, teachers, students, we've had to kind of adapt. We've only recently stopped teaching with masks on, for example. So the pandemic has changed a lot of the experience that I would have had. I'm only now really seeing my students' faces for the first time, and they're not what you imagine them to be, which is quite fun. And of course, teaching languages, you need to see the expressions, the faces. So that's been a bit of a challenge working abroad in this particular field. I think that's all that's really affected me in terms of the pandemic, to be honest, with my job. And traveling hasn't been so much of an issue, I think, because I'm quite rural. That hasn't really changed much for me personally. So.
Okay, and thank you to everyone who's sending in questions. Do feel free to send in more, but you're all asking great stuff, so thank you for that. Kimberly has asked, what kind of work do you do, or what type of work do you do abroad in relation to the course that is different to the content you learn at Exeter? So were there any kind of topics that you covered when you were at your universities abroad, which were different from what you were currently studying, and how did that kind of affect your studies? Emily?
Yeah, the topics that I got to study were really different from the things that I was learning back on my course. We had a certain amount of subject matter that we sort of had to cover that was course related, but with the rest of it, we could kind of do what we wanted, which was really nice. In the US, they have the system where you can take a minor subject. So I studied psychology as my minor, which was something I'd never studied at university. And they had some quite local modules, so things that were pertinent to sort of the local ecosystems and the local wildlife, which was just really interesting to take whilst I was there, because it really helped me appreciate the environment that I was in. But it wasn't something that I ever would have got the opportunity to study back at Exeter. So I was really grateful for that. It made things really interesting for me.
And I have come across Emily before, and I seem to remember you saying that you'd done horse riding as one of your modules. Is that right?
Yeah, we could take extra credit. So I took Western horse riding. So that was fab.
Okay, and Yama's asked, how heavy was your workload during your year abroad? So I suppose also in connection with that, did you have enough time to go and explore different cultures and see different things whilst you were studying abroad? Connor, do you want to come in on this one?
I think it depends on what you want to. Yeah, it depends on what you want to do for your year abroad. I don't know if this is still an option, so if it's not, then feel free to shut me up. But I didn't study abroad. I actually did an internship, which is something to bear in mind. So I didn't do a partner university program. And as I mentioned before, I wasn't so into the teaching side of things. So I applied for an internship in Germany and did that for 9 months. And that's worth bearing in mind for those that maybe want to get corporate experience, because it's great on your CV. But on the flip side, I was working full time, so it was 35 hours a week versus people, all my friends did British Council, and I think they were doing like 8 to 12 hours a week and were off gallivanting around the rest of Germany, just having fun. And I was working full time the whole time I was in Germany. And depending on the country that you go to, even though Germany is considered very advanced in its working laws as a Praktikant, as an intern, the holiday law in Germany is quite strict. So I only had 10 days for an entire year. And of course, the majority of those I used to go home over Christmas. So I actually only really had like 2 weekends where I could go and explore the country. So there's pros and cons to doing different kinds of things. So it's worth weighing that up. Of course, you get the corporate experience and you get to earn money in another country, which is fun, but there wasn't as much exploring in that sense.
Thank you for that, Connor. Did other people have similar experiences or different experiences when it came to kind of workload during your year abroad or in industry? Lucy.
So when I studied at the University of Vienna in Austria, and they're very, very flexible in the modules you can take. So I think I made my workload a bit too heavy, and I just added more and more credits just because there was so much flexibility, there was so much choice. And I think the workload in general for that particular university was very, very high. So I found it quite a lot to deal with. And I think that's probably because I didn't plan my modules particularly well when it comes to choices. But by Christmas, reevaluating things, it's easy to change, and you can kind of balance your workload when you orientate yourself in a new place. And of course, there was work to do back for Exeter as well. So you have to kind of reflect on your time abroad. You have to kind of keep kind of a journal with kind of vocabulary you've learned, experiences you've learned. So the workload, it counted for abroad as well as in Exeter. And I think by Christmas time, you kind of have that managed. I think you kind of understand how to balance it all. So it just takes time. And I think when you're mentally prepared for that, then you'll be fine with the workload.
Thank you for that, Lucy. And Kate has asked, what was the cost like to study and live abroad? So this will probably be quite different for each of you as you've studied in different places. For me?
Yeah, for me, it was considerably cheaper than living in the UK. And I'm from London, so it was much cheaper than living in London. And I found that while I was in Exeter, I had to work part-time to supplement the student loan. But when I was on my year abroad, my student loan was more than enough to cover all of my expenses and some additional money left over so that I could travel around the region. So I found that was very affordable, but this was a long time ago now. So I'm not sure if that still stands. yeah, so I would say that it was for me, it was quite cheap and affordable. But again, I wasn't studying in Europe. So, and then just to add a point to the previous question about workload, because I was studying Arabic, we only did Arabic classes, so there were no options to do any additional modules or topics on. It was a intensive full-time language learning course. So it would start about 8:30 in the morning and would finish around 2. And then I think on Fridays we had a half day. So it was intensive, and as challenging as the language learning part of the course was, we still had a lot of free time to go and explore and do our own thing, which was beneficial.
Yaja?
Yeah, so in terms of the cost of living and doing the course, yeah, for me, because I was in the Netherlands, it was, the tuition fees were a lot less than the UK, and also we were eligible for the Erasmus grant, which was obviously very welcome. And yeah, I think it was, the cost of living was fairly okay. I was able to sort of live quite comfortably and had a really nice place in as far as the student accommodation went in Maastricht. And to add on to the previous question about workload as well, I think for me, firstly, I got a chance to experience really different types of law. For instance, I mean, in Exeter, I was studying pure English law, whereas on my year abroad, I got a chance to do international and European law. I got to learn about laws in the US, Germany, the Netherlands, France, Canada, South Africa. I got a chance to do some really interesting courses. I think one was about neuroscience in the law. There was so many human rights based courses that I took up. So I did a lot of human rights work while I was out there. And as far as intensity goes, yes, it was, I think I'd say it was a fairly intense exchange, just because of the fact that we'd have exams quite frequently. But that, because I had that experience of studying abroad, I think I was able to translate those skills of being able to make sure I stay on top of my work back to Exeter for my final year. So all in all, it did me well of good doing the year abroad.
And we've had quite a big question come in from Thomas, which is, how do you see your career developing in the future? So have some time to think about that one. It's like when you're in your final year of university, everyone's going, what are you going to go on to do next year? And you're thinking, oh, not sure. Still thinking about it. Connor, thank you.
Without sounding too cringy, I think the most honest answer I can give is that I'm turning 27 in June, and the honest answer is I don't know. So for all of the students that are on this call that are a fair few years younger than I am, and you don't know what you're doing, please don't stress about it. That's absolutely fine. Although I love my job and I love what I do I want to be a salesman for the rest of my life? I don't know. Do I want to live in Denmark for the rest of my life? I don't know. And it can be a bit overwhelming, especially in your mid-20s, to think about your future and what you want to do. But because my degree was not specifically linked to one job, I can do anything and everything. So I would say, from my perspective, I don't know what my future will hold. But hopefully that might give some comfort to anyone on the call that doesn't know what they want to do. Like, even post-graduation, it's okay to not know if you don't have a specific path, and the best things can sometimes happen from just being spontaneous. So yeah.
Does anyone else want to venture? Oh, Emily.
was going to say thank you, Connor. You're making me feel better because I'm finishing my PhD in 3 months' time. I don't have an exact plan either about what I'm going to do. I have a general idea. I'd like to work for an NGO, an animal-related NGO, but with COVID and the kind of economic climate, I think some opportunities have shrunk a little bit in comparison to what they were before. So I'm not exactly sure what that's going to look like. But as Connor said, I am confident that the skills that I've gained throughout my study abroad and later on, they're really transferable skills. So I think that is kind of exciting in a way as well. But yeah, definitely echo that sentiment. You don't have to know exactly where you're going all of the time for it to turn out well.
Okay, we've had another question through, which is quite interesting. Just asking, what did you find were the biggest challenges of living abroad, and how did you manage those? Yasha?
I'd say it's immersing yourself into a completely different culture. For me, it kind of hit straight away. Even though the Netherlands, are, weather-wise, it's very similar to the UK as far as being as miserable goes. But no, I think the culture, the way that people conduct themselves. Not just the Dutch, but as I said, Maastricht it's a very international university, so there were people from all over the world, and just seeing how they function on a day-to-day basis, and the way that they think, what you might consider as normal would be completely perverse to someone else, and just kind of understanding that there is this dynamic, and understanding how you fit into that was something that took some getting used to. But what helped with it was the fact that there were so many other people who were going through the exact same thing, and we kind of, as far as exchange students go, a lot of us bonded together in trying to effectively integrate and understand how things work. And even for me right now, as I said, I've just come back from Geneva, where it was another culture shock because of the fact that I didn't speak French before I went, and then took up language lessons and had to, really throw myself into it in a very different way. But again, immersing yourself into the culture. And I think you only learn these kinds of things by throwing yourself into it, by not sort of shying away from the fact that, look, I don't speak this language, but I'm going to give it a go. And people appreciate that effort when you're abroad. You're trying your best to understand how their culture works, how their language works. And I think that's how I kind of managed to navigate it. But definitely the year abroad helped with my most recent experience abroad in Geneva as well.
That's good to hear that it prepared you well. And for me?
Yeah, I agree. I think culture was the biggest challenge. As you can imagine, the culture in Syria was very different to the culture in the UK, and it takes some navigating how you can behave, how you can dress, what you can do. And it even sounds crazy to say now, but while we were there, we chose to live in the old part of the city, and most of the homes that we stayed in didn't have internet. So we'd have to go to an internet cafe to have communication with friends, families. Even Facebook was banned, so we had to use a special VPN just to access Facebook in an internet cafe. So all of that took a lot of getting used to. But again, I agree that when you do it with lots of other students who are all in the same boat, it makes it so much easier. And then you get to value all of the different types of cultures, and you can have an appreciation for it. So when you don't have internet at home, you find other ways to entertain yourself, and you take the time to really get to know the locals and spend time with them and understand their perspectives. And I think that's such a richness that you don't always get when you stay in an area or in a country that is very similar to your own. So it's a challenge, but also there are definitely many positives to it as well.
That's really good to hear. Thank you for me. We've also had a question from Willow asking, is there only a limited amount of locations you can study abroad? Is it the same location for everyone if you're doing a combined law degree in particular? So I'll answer that one. So Willow, in terms of our university at least, we offer lots of different destinations when it comes to studying abroad at our partner university. So there's different places you can go. I would definitely advise you having a look on the university's admissions pages and specific study abroad pages as well, which will give you a bit more of a detailed list about which destinations you can go to. So I'm wondering whether my colleague might be able to put those links in the chat for you about kind of studying abroad and different destinations, which will give you a bit more information. But thank you, that's a great question. So another question for our lovely panel. Do you find working cultures different abroad, for example, in terms of the level of bureaucracy? Connor, can we bring you in on this one?
Yes and no. And being a group of people that have lived in other countries, I don't want to, come across with the stereotypical answer here, but even living and working in Denmark versus working in Denmark full-time and selling to Germans, you can really notice the difference in bureaucracy between a German and a Dane. Germans are meticulous with everything. To the point where it sometimes can actually get very frustrating. To sort of highlight that point, we have questions related to the data that's stored on our server for client data. And one client once asked us in an RFP if the doors to the building where the server is located are securely locked at night. And the server is Microsoft's server in Dublin. So I'm not sure if they were expecting me to fly over to Dublin and try and break in to Microsoft just to see how secure it was. So bureaucracy in that sense is definitely, it varies on country to country. In Denmark, for example, it's a lot lower, which is where the job is based. So I think it does depend on the culture where you are, but I can say from a DACH, like Germany, Austria, Switzerland perspective, I think red tape is way more intense than what we would be used to in the UK, whereas Scandinavia tends to be a little bit more aligned with UK business culture.
And just moving on from that, have any of you experienced any language barriers? I know Yaja's kind of addressed that a little bit. And I suppose if you have come across language barriers, how have you overcome those?
Yeah, I think in my case, as I said, I didn't speak a word of French before I went to Geneva, and actually touching on the bureaucracy point that Connor just mentioned, Brexit kind of added some complications as well, because I was supposed to go for the full 6 months, but actually I spent the first 2 months of my what's called a secondment, which was, you go from my London office to Geneva. I spent the first 2 months actually working remotely from here while I was waiting for all the visa formalities to be resolved. So I ended up only spending 4 months physically in Geneva out of the 6. So I definitely experienced the bureaucracy elements of it. And yeah, I completely agree. I think the Swiss authorities do they're quite stringent as far as bureaucracy goes. And yeah, I did kind of see the end of that. As far as language barriers go, yeah, of course. I mean, with the good thing with Geneva is it is a cosmopolitan city. So you've got so many large international organizations there. You've got the UN there, the headquarters of the UN there. You've got the Red Cross. You've got other very big organizations there. The International Organization for Migration as well is there. So yes, people will initially speak to you in French, but when they realize that either you don't speak French, or if you try to speak French like me and embarrass yourself, they'll speak to you in English. So yeah, I didn't face the language barriers as such, just because people were quite accommodating, and I try. I was taking language lessons as well on a weekly basis to try and get by a little bit on a day-to-day basis. So yeah, I think it was okay. for me.
We've got about 5 more minutes left and some great questions still coming in. So thanks so much, everybody. Thomas has asked, are the teaching methods much different abroad? So for those of you who did study abroad, how did you find the teaching methods compared to what you were used to at Exeter? Go ahead, Lucy.
So something that really shocked me in Austria was that there was not enough places to sit in the lecture hall. So students would be sitting on the floor, they'd be standing, they'd be writing notes stood up because they're desperate to go to this, amazing lectures. And the lectures were really good. They were they were delivered by very professional lecturers. So lots of people wanted to go and there wasn't always enough space. And we'd actually learned a little bit about this in our classes, in our language classes. It had been in the paper, the difficulty of oversubscribed universities because they're a lot cheaper in Europe for Austrians or Germans to go to their own home country. It was only about 30 euros a year for me to study there, for example. So it's a lot cheaper to enroll as a student, but it also meant lots of people wanted to be there. So that was something that was quite challenging, I think. In terms of teaching methods, the lecturers didn't really address that problem. They just carried on with their lectures, kind of walking around. The students sat on the floor. It was very interesting to witness. And I think one thing that was really striking was the difference with, there was not so much of a student voice. So I felt very lucky in Exeter that we had a student voice. We were able to give feedback, speak, say what we think about modules, give our feedback on what we like, what we dislike. And in Vienna, that wasn't something that happened very regularly. It was very professional. They delivered the lectures and that was it. You kind of went away and studied alone. So that was very different kind of terms of teaching and the student life as a whole, which was quite difficult to get used to at first, I think. But of course they had lectures and seminars just as Exeter would. So that was a similarity. And they also had language classes in the evening if you wanted to keep up with German or if you wanted to take up another language. That's also similar to the teaching methods at Exeter on the whole, yeah.
Did anyone else experience different teaching methods when they were studying abroad? Emily?
I think the teaching style in the US was quite different in that I think we're really well prepared at Exeter to do independent studying, and there's a lot of that expectation that you'll be going away and you'll be thinking critically about stuff, whereas it was a lot more kind of learning by rote, and just having lecture material kind of presented to you in the classes, and there was less of that independent element. So I think that was probably the biggest difference in teaching that I noticed.
Great, thank you for that. And I think we've got time for one more question. So what did you do before or during university in order to help you prepare or enhance your application for your degree? So maybe pre-university, so thinking a while back, did you do anything to kind of enhance your application to university? So right at the beginning of your career journey, I suppose. For me.
I could probably say that I was very international minded from when I was still in sixth form. So I chose to do the International Baccalaureate instead of doing normal A-levels. And the school that I did International Baccalaureate in allowed me to study Arabic ab initio, which if anyone does the IB or heard of the IB, it's like beginner's Arabic. And the International Baccalaureate requires that you study one language, either at a higher or a standard level. So I knew that I wanted to take a language. I wasn't sure it was actually going to end up being Arabic. at university, and studying one language, well, two languages and French, allows you, I knew would increase my chances. So if anyone wants to study a language at university, it does help if you study that language at sixth form level as well. Also, that wasn't a requirement, so you don't have to have studied Arabic, obviously, before going to university or applying for the language at university. But doing so, I think, would strengthen your application, even if it's just a language that you do on the side, for example.
Okay, so unless anyone has anything they'd like to add, I think we'll wrap it up there. So thank you so much to our brilliant panel for coming along tonight, for all your answers and your stories, and for being really transparent as well. We appreciate that. Thanks also to all our attendees. We hope you found it useful, and thanks again for coming along. So yes, enjoy your evenings, go and grab some dinner, and thanks to everyone. Take care.